Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Reserved Investments as we continue our question and answer piece related to the 13,000 subscriber Q&A series. Like the way I worded that? It's a fancy way of saying we're going back in to the 13,000 subscriber Q&A series so we can finally finish this series and put it to rest and move on to other exciting topics surrounding collectible finance in the antiques and collectibles trade. So with that being said, we're going to dive right into the questions head first. First question, Sean, what are your thoughts on vintage booster boxes of Magic the Gathering like Mirage, Visions, Weatherlight, Tempest, and Urzas, amongst others, that have cratered in price over the last year or so? I know you had predicted this, and I was truly glad I took your advice and sold into the hype. But I know some speculators and would-be investors that are down tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. When will this market recover? Okay, I have to state this again and again on this channel. If you are attempting to invest long-term in Magic the Gathering products, the only way to invest in these particular collectibles over the long term, in my opinion, is to go after Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, Alpha, Beta, and Unlimited. I do not like the Dark. I do not like Revised. I do not like all these sets from the Mirage block, the Tempest block, the Urza block. I especially do not like Fallen Empires. I don't like Homelands. I don't like Ice Age. I don't like any of that stuff over the long term. If you go back and you watch my early videos on this channel, when speculation was running rampant in this market, I told you guys, sell into the hype. At that particular point in time, you would have got like $7,000 to $9,000 for a booster box of Mirage. Go look at what they're selling for now. And I'm so sick of people coming to me going, well, Sean, it's because the overall economy is right now in a very bad place. I'm sorry, I gotta disagree. Right now, as I record this video, the S&P 500 index is at a 14-month high. I want to make that very clear so that you guys understand that if the past 14 months you were diligently investing in an S&P 500 index fund, you are now up. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to continue. At any given time, there's still headwinds in the overall economic situation that we find ourselves in, with inflation, with uncertainties. Is the Fed going to continue to raise rates? But overall, you would have been better off staying the course with a well-diversified portfolio than going in any of this crazy stuff like graded video games, vintage Magic the Gathering, comic books, vintage toys. All of these pop culture collectibles, for the most part, have fallen significantly in price. And a lot of you guys, what did I always tell you guys? A lot of you are investing in reverse. When an item hits an all-time high, that's when you choose to invest in it. That is the opposite of investing. Whenever Entrepreneur Magazine or Money Magazine or the Wall Street Journal is talking about investing in Pokemon cards or Magic the Gathering or sports cards or even rare coins, that's when you got to take a step back and say, hey, obviously there's a lot of people investing in this market right now. I'm going to take a wait and see attitude. I'm not going to put my money in these niche markets right now. Now, to be fair, given the fact that a lot of these markets have fallen in some cases, 50, 60, 70, 80, in some cases over 100% almost, at least it seems that way, now may be a good time to get back into some of these markets if you truly believe that a lot of these markets have long-term validity. Again, if I'm investing in Magic the Gathering, I'm sorry, guys, I do not like Mirage, Visions, Weatherlight, Tempest, or Urza for the long term. You can care to disagree, but there's too much price volatility in that market. Is there price volatility when we look at Arabian Nights or, I don't know, Legends or Antiquities or Alpha or Beta? The answer is yes. But there's a lesser amount of quantity of those particular products. Whether you're going after high-end reserve list key cards like your Black Lotus, your Power 9, your Libraries of Alexandrias, your Moats, whatever, compared to Fallen Empires, Mirage, even some of these more iconic cards like Ion's Eye Diamond. There's a lot of that stuff out there, guys. That's why I do not like investing in that part of the market over the long term. I understand why you guys choose to invest in that market. Compared to Arabian Nights, compared to Antiquities, compared to Legends or Alpha, Beta, or even in some cases Unlimited, it's a lot cheaper. The barrier to entry is low. That's why you guys need to use caution. And that's what I keep telling you. You know, go back to the wonderful proof card Star Wars video that I did with the Lobot proof card. And there's still people that are talking about that in collecting forums. There's people making videos about it. That particular piece, to even find another Empire Strikes Back proof card in AFA 90, let me know when you do, because I can tell you right now, I follow Hakes Auctions. I follow all of these auction sites, and they rarely come up for bid. I look for true scarcity and true organic collectability in the highest grade possible, within reason, optimal collecting grade. But that's what I look for if I'm going to invest long-term in any of these markets. The Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters, they don't understand that. And they're the first people that come on this channel in the comments and try to cut me up. You know, I did a video where I warned you guys about investing long-term in modern era video games. And that video was done many, many years ago. And somebody came just recently and put a comment in there. Hey, Sean, that Pokemon Omega Ruby game for the Nintendo 3DS that you were holding up factory sealed in that particular video is now worth close to $100 factory sealed. Here's what I want you to do. Go back and look at when that particular game came out. That game retailed in the United States for $39.99. If you would have put that $39.99 plus tax in an S&P 500 index fund, I really hate to say this, you would have pretty much that same $100. And when you go to cash out, if you do choose to cash out of your S&P 500 index, you don't have to worry about paying eBay fees. You don't have to worry about getting scammed. You don't have to worry about paying postage to send that item to someone across the country and just hoping that they leave you a positive feedback on eBay. This is something that people do not think about. There are opportunity costs. There are expenses to tying your money up in antiques and collectibles. And I could sit here till I'm blue in the face. I could read articles from Harry Rinker. I could read other experts in the trade that we haven't even covered yet on this particular channel. And you guys, some of you will just sit there and disagree with me because you have a fondness for this stuff. I'm going to state this, and this is going to sound a little bit harsh. Most of you watching this particular channel, this particular video right now, are not financially established. You should not be trying to spend $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 on a semi-vintage box of Magic the Gathering cards just because a YouTuber, just because you have an emotional attachment to it, just because a TikToker, just because someone on an online collecting forum told you that it could be a good investment. It could be an unregistered asset that you could have at your disposal that no one can take from you. Who cares? You're not financially established. It's just like the idiot gold bugs telling me, Sean, central banks, they hold a lot of their money in gold. Dude, you can barely afford to buy a house. You're not a fucking central bank. Wake up here. This is not rocket science. Read a book on finance. Okay, I'm not trying to be harsh to you guys. I'm trying to literally save your own life and your financial life. We are going into uncertain times in regards to the political divide in America, who is getting tax cuts, wealth inequality. All that is going on behind the scenes, and a lot of you are oblivious to it, and you're doing crazy things with your money. I'm here to tell you the greatest gift that you have. If you are young, if you are in your 20s and 30s right now watching this video, the most powerful asset you have at your disposal is time. Compounding interest, the time value of money, where if you seriously work hard and you put $10,000 a year in an S&P 500 index fund, or even just a well-diversified portfolio. If you don't know what you're doing, go to a financial advisor. They'll help you. They'll walk you through the steps. They're not all evil, I assure you. If you do that in 20 years, you will have something. There's no guarantee playing around with this stuff and putting all your money in cryptocurrency, collectibles, gold, silver. There's no guarantee you're going to have anything, guys. It could all literally collapse tomorrow. These are extremely niche markets. In order for any of these collectibles, I don't care what it is, to go up in value, you have to have new buyers, new collectors, new demand coming into the market that is going to be willing to pay a premium for these products. And you have to have supply at least staying the same, if not starting to tilt downward. And we are nowhere near that in some of these markets. What happened over the last 4 years with the pandemic, everything else going on surrounding it, with the easy money, with the run-up in crypto, with the run-up in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, the everything bubble, you need to understand that is not the norm. And a lot of you guys are looking at that time period going, well, gee, if that happens again, I want to have all this stuff over here. I'll be ready this time. Now I know. There's no guarantee that's going to happen again. Now, before I go on to the next question, am I saying these markets are going to go to zero? Absolutely not. But what I am saying is you can have a market that achieves an all-time high price and it never gets back to that price. No matter how long you look into the future, it's just not going to happen. The demand, the circumstances that cause that asset to go to that level just are not there. This happens a lot in antiques and collectibles. There's pieces of high-end art, I could tell you right now, in my opinion, are blue chip investments. They hit a high price. They may never reach that price again, guys. This is the way these markets work. They are very niche. You got to understand one thing. If you're in the market for high-end art, and you're one of these billionaires, and you're paying like $100 million for a painting, you are aware the only type of people that can afford to pay that type of money for that painting are other billionaires. Pretty much, you're going to run out of people that are able to afford paintings at that level for prices to keep escalating higher and higher in that market. And believe it or not, I do interact with people that can afford at least paintings at the low 7-digit range. We're talking millions of dollars, not hundreds of millions, but millions of dollars. And they'll tell you the same thing if you talk to them. That is one of their concerns if they go and they park that amount of money in that asset class. It may be rare, it may be quote unquote valuable, but you still got to find another buyer when you go to sell it. And I honestly wish that I could take you behind the scenes with some of these auction companies, because all is what you guys see is the hype. You don't see what goes in to the work that a lot of these companies have to do to promote, to quote unquote hype up a lot of these products to get the average person, the average collector, the investors, the hardcore collectors, the speculators excited to spend money on some of this stuff. Because at the end of the day, all this is a smokescreen, guys. All is what this is people blowing smoke up your ass saying, hey, you have a fondness for this particular item? Do you suffer from nostalgia? Do you remember the first time you opened up, I'll use this as an example, your first pack of Magic the Gathering cards? You want to relive that again? Well, now you can. Just bid on this particular item. Don't worry about finance. Don't worry about money. These markets are going to keep going up and up. Just click the bid button. Who gets that money? The money has to go somewhere, right? You have to have a seller if you're a buyer, and for a transaction to take place, you have to have two parties, a buyer and a seller. So let me ask you this. If that's such a great investment, why is the person on the other end selling? Now, you can argue, well, Sean, maybe he has to liquidate, maybe he's overextended, maybe he lost his job, maybe his business is in shambles, maybe he's going through a divorce, whatever it is, I get that. But you guys got to start asking questions. If this is such a great investment, how come so many of these are readily available on the market at any given time? And a lot of you, I hate to say this, you lack the critical thought to think in that manner because you're so emotionally attached to these damn objects. Next question. Hey, Sean, could you discuss the differences in pop culture collectibles? Specifically, how the mindset of the collector seems to be very different from one type of collectible to another. For example, I collect vintage Pokemon cards, both graded and raw. I'm familiar with that market, but I also pay attention to graded comics and video games as a secondary interest. I have noticed that in the graded card market, there is a buyer at any grade, 1 to 10. That is not 100% true. If you are talking Pokemon cards, you need to understand that Pokemon right now is still in a mass speculative euphoria. There is going to come a time where we're already there in certain markets, the junk slab era. If you want proof of this, look at comic books. You know, back when Amazing Spider-Man 129 in CGC 9.4 was a $1,500 book, very few people would ever think it was worthwhile to slab an Amazing Spider-Man 129 in like a 1.0, 2.0, or 3.0 grade. It just wouldn't be worth the grading costs and then attempting to find a buyer on the open market when the average person at that particular time could get a 9.4 for $1,500. Well, when that particular Amazing Spider-Man 129 in CGC 9.4 went to $9,000, now if you're somebody that's holding a raw, ungraded Amazing Spider-Man 129 in 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, or heaven forbid, 4.0 condition, if you send that to CGC, it comes back graded. Given the fact that a 9.4 is worth $9,000, you're going to be able to sell your CGC graded Amazing Spider-Man 129 in 3.0 condition for now a premium. So now it's worth slabbing it. Well, guess what happens? If that market craters, which vintage comic books have started to drop 30, 40% in certain cases, now no one's going to want to buy that particular CGC 3.0 Amazing Spider-Man 129 at a premium because now they're looking at the market going, well, gee, that 9.4 went from 9,000. Now it's all the way down to 7. It might be going down to 6,500, 6,000. Why would I pay any type of premium for this 3.0? Everything's relevant. So you have to be careful when you look at these markets and you go, well, gee, right now, everybody will buy a vintage Pokemon card, even in 1.0 condition or 2.0 condition or 3, whatever lowest grades are in that particular range. You have to realize that that market is in a speculative euphoria. This too shall pass, I assure you. Now, you go on to state, however, in other markets such as comic books, if it isn't a 9.8, it just seems like no one wants it. That's not true. For modern era comic books and most Copper Age comic books and certain late Bronze Age books, you are correct. 9.8 is the standard for a lot of those books. For instance, if you come to me and you have a love affair with Amazing Spider-Man 300, first appearance of Venom, or New Mutants 98, first appearance of Deadpool, if you want to buy those particular books, which I caution against, if you do want to own them though, if you're buying them for investment, you're going to need to get those books in 9.8 condition. Reason being is there's too many out there in 9.2, 9.4, 9.6, hell, even in 9.8 condition if you look at the CGC census. So that matters for those particular books. Same is true if you collect late Bronze Age books, like your Godzilla 1, your Miss Marvel 1, books like that. You would also potentially, if you were going to try to invest in them, it would be best going after them in 9.8 condition. Again, I usually tell people not to invest overall for the long term in late Bronze Age and most, not all, Copper Age books or even modern era books. The money, the long-term investment potential in vintage comic books is always going to be in your Golden Age keys, your Silver Age keys, and also your early Bronze Age keys. And when I say early Bronze Age keys, I also mean scarcity. So we're talking Batman 227, House of Secrets 92, books like that are iconic and have some level of scarcity to them. And if you're buying books like that, you don't have to get them in 9.8. No one out there is realistically looking for a House of Secrets 92 and will only accept it in 9.8 condition. Okay? That book is very hard to find, even in 9.4 condition. You need to understand the optimal collecting grade. I do want to go back to your question, though, because I kind of got off on a rant there. I just want to correct your logic with this question, because you have to understand that your question is being asked congruent to the market that we are currently in, which is a speculative euphoria when we're specifically talking about Pokemon cards. You're also incorrect to a certain degree on how comic book grading and what collectors want out of certain graded books. So that's why I'm correcting you. Is this just a function of comics being older and more mature as opposed to trading card games originating from the 1990s? Here you are spot on. This is 100% correct. Yes, the differences between the collectible card game market and the vintage comic book market are multifaceted, but the main difference is vintage comic books were collected avidly in the 1960s and 70s. Collectible card games only became a thing literally in the 1990s. So those markets are on different trajectories. We can compare them. They're both pop culture. There is some crossover there, obviously. There's crossover collectors. But the markets are inherently different for how they have been playing out on the secondary market overall. And this is something that you got to take into account. At some point in time, this too shall pass. These markets will change and morph. That's why I tell you guys that come to me and you say, Sean, I love Pokemon, but I don't like the vintage stuff. I'm only going after the modern stuff. I tell you guys, be very careful with that particular mindset. There are virtually no collecting categories in existence, with very few exceptions, where the vintage items are selling for less than the modern or later items in that same collecting category. And a lot of you guys keep trying to come up with categories to prove me wrong on this. I assure you, virtually none exist. If we look at the art market is multifaceted. You have the modern masters, you have contemporary, you have different areas of those markets that perform differently. But always, a Da Vinci is going to hold a lot of money on the secondary market. Let's be realistic. Does that mean a Warhol should be ignored? No, but Warhol is a contemporary artist. Okay, Da Vinci's a master. Let's be realistic here. As a result, those markets are really not comparable, other than the fact that they're both part of the art market. Okay, guys? So you kind of have to look at this from the perspective of somebody that is analyzing these markets almost like looking at an individual stock or trying to dissect the S&P 500 index. That's really how you have to analyze these markets. You have to take a step back and not be so emotional. A lot of you guys, when I interact with the Pokemon crowd, or in certain cases the video game crowd, you guys are way too emotional, and I don't know how to break it from you. If you want to be successful in these markets, as a speculator, as an investor, short-term, long-term, you gotta at least be able to keep that emotional attachment in check. You really got to use logic and reasoning when you analyze these markets. And a lot of you, I hate to say this, you can't do it. You just can't do it. I mean, I've been on YouTube now for almost 4 years. I've interacted with a lot of different people, just through my consulting business, through collectors that I have a common interest in, to people that have just come and started talking to me, to people that email me, to other YouTubers. And that's one thing that I really see that a lot of people struggle with is they listen to all this hype-driven content and they buy into it hook, line, and sinker. And you can't do that. You have to have critical thought. You got to apply critical thought at all times to any of this stuff that you're listening to on YouTube, on TikTok, even anything in the news media, okay? This extends not only to investing, this extends to relationships. A lot of you guys listen to misogynistic red pill dating advice. You have to understand that there is a reason why that particular person is putting out that content on YouTube or TikTok, and why certain people are drawn to it and others can look at it and go, yeah, that's completely ridiculous. Same thing with politics. A lot of you are misled politically, and I'm not going to go far into this. You don't have to worry. I'm not going to get political in this video. I'm just saying a lot of you are misled because you're not answering or asking the question, why is this particular individual so keen on making me feel this way about this particular issue? Does it really affect me? Does it really affect my life? And if you literally rip apart the layers and break things down and analyze them from that standpoint, you're going to see that the world is pretty much nothing but hype and nothing but manipulation. And you have to navigate around that, even in relationships, in dating, in business, in your professional career, in investing. That is key, guys. That's all I'm going to state. Next question. Sean, if you had $5 million to invest in a diverse portfolio of collectibles, incorporating the blue chip verticals alongside the higher risk growth hobbies, what would your capital allocation strategy be? Oh, you guys are going to, well, I shouldn't say that. You guys might not hate my answer on this entirely. First of all, out of $5 million that was going solely in the antiques and collectibles, I'm going to state something here that probably won't surprise you. $3 million of it is right away going on the antique side of the equation. Now, that'll probably divide it up with coins, currency, historical documents, potentially certain collectible first edition books. Then the other $2 million, this is probably going to shock some of you, would probably be divided up into vintage comic books. I would probably devote a whole $1 million to. And then the other $1 million would be divided among vintage Star Wars to a certain degree, Pokemon, believe it or not, and also Magic the Gathering, along with very few, but some vintage video games. So that's how I would divide it up. So $3 million of this would go right into antiques, meaning graded coins, currency, historical documents, collectible first edition books, and then the other $2 million, again, $1 million would probably be invested in high-end vintage scarce comic book keys. And then of that, what was left would be spread amongst vintage Star Wars, Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and certain, very few, we're talking only a handful of vintage video games. That's how I would set up that portfolio. And in all honesty, I would expect the coins and currency to do the best. I know you guys will disagree with that, but over the long term, I would predict the coins and currency would do the best out of that portfolio, because that's pretty much how my portfolio performs over the long term. Because you guys got to remember, I've been collecting rare coins now and even pieces of currency for well over, 20 years at this particular point. And if you look up the prices that I paid for some of those particular items and what they're selling for now, I have done extremely well in that market. That's not to say there aren't pop culture collectibles like my comic book collection, like some of my vintage toy collection that has also done very well. But the catalysts that caused those particular markets to pop are quite different from the catalysts that caused rare coins to go up in value, rare pieces of currency to go up in value. So that's pretty much how I invest that. And believe it or not, guys, with that size of a portfolio, I would not touch high-end art, because on $5 million, that's really not a lot to spend on art, and more specifically, higher-end art. Would I potentially consider going after a couple of six-figure pieces in that allocation that I have devoted towards the antique side of the equation? Yes, particularly, but it would take a lot to get me to spend the money on those particular items. And rather than spend it on coins, currency, historical documents, and certain first edition collectible books. But that's exactly how I would invest it. I'm being very honest with you guys. Next question. Sean, I'm still under 30 and have some debt, mostly some school loans and one credit card with no interest. If in a few years' time, I was thinking to start a Roth IRA and then look into perhaps rare coins, given what I have seen on your channel, I am sure you would suggest to continue my investments into my index funds and start on that Roth IRA. But what would be the average amount of time needed to get up to speed wise to start investing in antiques and collectibles using rare coins as a more solid starting point? Okay, I'm going to stop you right there because this is my advice. If you truly have a passion for rare coins, This is a market that is unlike the collectible side of the trade. If you want to invest in video games, Pokemon cards, comic books, toys, you can jump right in, feet first. You can go on Heritage, you can go on Hakes, you can go on eBay, you can log on to any other auction site that I didn't even mention, and you can start bidding on these items and build a collection. Now, would I recommend that route? No. But with rare coins, you have to take a wait-and-see attitude. You have to read a lot of books about investing in rare coins, understanding the market dynamics, understanding market cycles in rare coins. Remember, guys, rare coins are part of the antique side of the trade. The difference between an antique and collectible, other than age, obviously, antiques are 100 years of age or older in most cases, is that antique markets, for the most part, are cyclical. Collectible markets are linear. At some point, the market for most collectibles is going to die out. I'm sorry to say this, but if you ask anybody who collected Pez dispensers, toy robots, Japanese tin toys, Schwinn bicycles, I hate to say this, those markets are on their way out. They're not booming right now in the antique side of the trade. Those markets are linear. As a result, it's a different way to invest in those particular markets over the long term than that of markets that are cyclical. If we look at antiques, if you want to study rare coins, you're going to come across a book called The Coin Collector's Survival Manual. Look that book up, buy it. You can probably get it for under $20 new on Amazon or on eBay, even if you want to buy it used. Get that book, start reading it, and you're going to understand that throughout the last many, many decades, the rare coin marketplace has always gone in cycles. There is no end in sight from that stopping anytime soon. I want to be very clear. Do not listen to the Timmies, Kimmies, Poindexters, the idiots on YouTube that try to cut me up and say, Sean, nobody collects or invests in coins. Those little Timmies, they don't know shit, okay? They don't know their ass from the hole in the ground. It's no different on Reddit. If you try to get investing advice on Reddit, you are a fucking moron. Most people on Reddit are not millionaires. Most people on Reddit are everyday individuals just going throughout life, trying to get through their day, hoping they don't get smacked in the face with a stale donut. Don't get your advice from stupid people, okay? That's all that I'm saying. With that being said, you need to take a wait-and-see attitude, do a lot of research, understand the rare coin marketplace. Then, only then, when you have all your ducks in a row, you have money saved up, you're ready to buy your first coin, you know what I would tell you? Work with a prominent dealer. If you want some high-end coin dealers, email me. I can recommend some. There's Doug Winter is probably one of the most prominent coin dealers when it comes to proof gold coins, when it comes to very antique gold coins. He specializes in that stuff. Harry Labstein, I always say his name wrong, okay? Harry Labstein is an excellent dealer who will work with you, who will take the time where if you call him and you say, hey, you have this coin on your website, I really like it. What can you tell me about it? What do you think of the market for this particular coin? What are your feelings on this coin? They will literally take some time and work with you. That's what I recommend, okay? You need to seek out people that are not hype driven, that are not going to just tell you a line of bull so that they part ways with the coin at your expense, meaning they get your money, you get the coin, and in a couple of years, you don't know why you bought it. That is the wrong way to enter into a transaction. That's why I like working hands-on with certain dealers in some of these markets, okay? That's my best advice to you when you get to that point. I would honestly tell you, though, if you are not yet financially established, if you have a lot of debt, please do not start to invest in antiques and collectibles, and especially do not start with rare coins, okay? It's not going to work for you. You go on the state. Do you have to study up a few times a month or like multiple times a week if the market changes that often? Certain collecting categories, yes. Speculative bubbles, Pokemon cards, comic books, vintage toys, Magic the Gathering. Yes, those markets change on a dime. When it comes to rare coins, if you're going after semi-scarce or key date coins and you're buying them for the long term, You do not have to obsess over the market every month. You can literally check in on the market twice a year and you're good to go for most rare coins if you buy right. That's why I like that market in general, guys. It works differently than most collectible markets. And the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters don't realize that, okay? That's pretty much your question. I just read it. You just go on to state, thank you for all the great advice over the years, and I hope in a few years' time I can be financially established and comment on your 50,000 subscriber Q&A. I don't know if we'll ever get to that point, but thank you so much for your kindness. Next question. Sean, aside from an enjoyment of collecting, is there any reason to put your money in collectibles long term when a well-diversified portfolio or an S&P 500 index fund will probably be better and safer? You say that often, but still invest in collectible markets. Why? Because I diversify in collectible markets. If you diversify into these markets and you're not spending money that you are dependent upon, you're not doing anything stupid with credit cards or crazy financing or any of this shit, you can diversify in collectibles. And if you understand the basics, you can make it work for you over the short term or over the long term. Look, guys, it's obvious, no secret, that I do have a passion for a lot of these markets. It should come through on how I speak about some of these markets. I like video games. I like comic books. I like toys. I like rare coins. I like currency. I like art. I like historical documents. I love history. I love learning about history. I love going to museums. I love taking the time to walk around Philadelphia, historic parts of Philadelphia. I like walking around Valley Forge just because it's rooted in history. You guys need to understand that if you're diversifying in these markets, you understand the opportunity costs, you understand the risk. It's okay. My problem is with the Timmies, Kimmies, and Poindexters that get caught up in the hype and they come in the comment section and they attack me for simply pointing out that they are making a major mistake. You cannot put all your money in collectibles or cryptocurrency or gold and silver and expect to be able to compete in the business world as a young professional, as an aging professional, even in the dating world. Do you honestly think that if you put all your money in gold and silver, that is especially appealing to a woman who is going to potentially marry you or get into a long-term relationship with you? That's not going to be attractive if she has any understanding of finance. I'm here to tell you guys make a lot of mistakes. I'm not telling you, to go over this again, and I already covered this in another segment, I do not like gold and silver as an investment vehicle. If you want to diversify, though, 3-5% of your portfolio in gold and silver, you're not in debt, you're not doing anything stupid with credit cards or doing anything like stupid with options trading or anything like that, I have no problem if you want to put 3-5%. Hell, I have some people that tell me, Sean, I'm going to put 10% in gold and silver. You do you. That's fine if you're financially established. The problem is most people get obsessed with these markets and they don't see anything else. All they see is Pokemon or Magic the Gathering or vintage video games or comic books. And they almost become consumed by it. And it's very visible to me. You got to remember, guys, I've been active in these markets since the age of 12. I've seen my fair share of lifers, of hoarders, of people with attachment issues, people with personality problems that just collect all this stuff and pretty much have hoarding problems and the like. I've seen it all. I can tell you stories of houses I walked into. I could tell you insane stories of people that have done stupid things to the point where they ended up living alone in tragic, sad lives simply because they were obsessed with something, I'm just going to state this, stupid. Whether it be comic books or vintage toys, they could not get past it. It was their obsession. That's what I'm warning you guys about. And unfortunately, in the hype-driven world that we see on YouTube, on TikTok, on collecting forums, those particular people are out there. And you want to know what else? They tend to become my fiercest critics, because here's a guy who has been in these markets since the age of 12, and they have to sit there and scratch their head wait a minute, why is this guy who supposedly loves antiques and collectibles telling me I can't invest all this money in comic books or toys or Pokemon cards? Because I know how it ends up. I've seen it a million times. The people that have money and make money in the antiques and collectibles trade and truly have a passion, they're a different breed. They're able to control their emotional attachment to these items. And number two, they diversify in these markets. They don't put everything they have into them. When I talk about people like mentors of mine that had collections of vintage advertising, or even Harley Davidson motorcycle parts, or even rare coins, or comic books, or vintage space toys, or pinball machines. Some of these individuals had collections like in the $500,000 range, almost up to $1 million. That wasn't their core holdings, guys. Their core holdings were in real estate and financial markets. So not only did they have this collection worth like $500,000 or $1 million, they also had millions of dollars in certain instances in financial markets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, index funds, ETFs, and also real estate on top of that. That's why I tell you guys, if collectibles are your primary asset class, or crypto, or gold, or silver, you are doing something inherently wrong, and it is going to come back to bite you at some point. In most cases, you are sorely mistaken as to how these markets work. And that's why I do this channel. That's why I offer consulting services in these markets, because there's a lot of people that do stupid things. Next question. Sean, I max out my 401k every year along with my Roth IRA, but I'm wondering if it would be better to just open another brokerage account with no retirement benefits and put money there instead of Pokemon cards. Okay, that's completely up to you. Right now, Pokemon cards are in a massive speculative euphoria. When's it going to end? I can't tell you that. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if it's going to end 6 months from now, 5 years from now. I don't know if it's going to go on another 20 years. I can't tell you that. What I will tell you is, are you comfortable with how much money you are putting into Pokemon cards? If not, you have to assess that risk. It's just like, it's no different. Let's use this in reverse. Okay, I'm going to say something that's going to shock you. There are people that come to me and they say, hey, you know what, Sean? I would love to put together a well-diversified financial portfolio. But the problem is, I'm really scared about market volatility. I don't think that stock market investing is for me, even if it is through index funds like you recommend. What I would tell you is, you should then, this is going to shock you, work with a financial advisor, assess your risk, and basically come up with a plan that you are comfortable with, that you can sleep well at night with, even if your returns don't meet or exceed what somebody like me would be comfortable with. You have to invest in what you are comfortable with at the end of the day. You got to understand what you are investing in, and you need to understand the risk of that asset. Even if it is an S&P 500 index fund, a total stock market index fund, a well-diversified financial portfolio composed of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and the like. You have to be comfortable with it, and you got to understand it. My problem is with the majority of people trying to invest in Pokemon, or great at video games, or comic books, or vintage toys. They don't understand the risk that they are undertaking. And when they do start to understand it, 10, 20 years later, it's usually in most cases too late to revert course. And I know that's a controversial statement, but what did I say earlier on in this same Q&A? If you are in your 20s or 30s, time is the greatest asset you have. The people that started early by putting their money in a well-diversified portfolio at the age of like 21, 22, 23, or even if, they didn't graduate college, let's say that they have a master's degree or they're a doctorate and they didn't graduate till they're 28 or 30. If they start putting money into a well-diversified portfolio year after year, time value of money alone is going to take care of the rest. And I tell people this. So it depends on what you're comfortable with. You have to make that decision. Don't let me make it for you. Don't let somebody else make it for you. I recommend a lot of books on this channel, both rooted in the collectible space, meaning collectible finance, killer stuff, tons of money, books like that. What's the book that I have over there? Collectible investments for high net worth investors, books like that. all the way through to books on investing in hardcore financial assets. Read those books, work with a financial advisor if you need to, make your own best decisions. Next question. Wow, we have a lot of questions left. I may have to split this up. There may be another segment to this Q&A. I want to get through some of these though. Have you ever considered collecting classic cars? The answer is no, for the reason that the maintenance and upkeep for classic cars is very, very intense. It's extremely expensive, and it does eat into the returns of that type of investment. Unless if you have millions upon millions of dollars at your disposal, I would not recommend investing in classic cars. I came close once. DeLorean. I'm a huge DeLorean fan, believe it or not. So I guess you could say I did kind of invest in classic cars, but that did not work out too well. I will state that. So that's all I'm going to say on that question. Just be very careful if you're going into classic cars. Insurance, maintenance, upkeep, trying to predict what particular models are going to be hot and sell at a premium at auction is very, very difficult, guys. I tell even my most well-versed, most financially well-off clients to avoid that market. I'm going to be 100% honest. Next question. Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 4 was underwhelming, with also the upcoming Phase 5 not looking exciting as well. Didn't we all see this coming? Did I not tell you at some point that audiences were going to start to sour on all these stupid superhero movies that keep being made, that keep coming out almost month after month? I told you guys this. Nothing is forever. Nothing lasts forever. This will all pass at some point. This has led to many bronze, copper, and modern keys losing 50% in value from a year ago. Do you see Marvel movie-hyped comic books picking up steam again? Or is the bloom off the rose for movie-hyped comic books? I like the way you wrote that. Is the bloom off the rose? The answer is, I think that collectors are becoming more wiser. I think that a lot of investors and speculators really see what's at play here. They're starting to wake up, especially due to the pandemic, the rise up in vintage comic book prices, then the subsequent almost crash. So I think that that is playing into this. But what I will tell you is I don't think that people are done speculating on movie hype books. I still think that's going to be a thing, but I think it's going to be done more cautiously going forward in certain circumstances, and rightfully so. So that's the best way I could tell you in that particular scenario. Just use your own common sense. I mean, let's be realistic. Is the first appearance of Rocket Raccoon, is that really a major key compared to the first appearance of Batman or Superman, or even, heaven forbid, Wolverine or Spider-Man? I mean, I hope most of you can see the difference between those two characters. This is why I tell you, first appearance of Blade the Vampire Slayer, Tomb of Dracula 10, they're making a movie, or Werewolf by Night 32, Moon Knight. Are we really putting Blade the Vampire Slayer and Werewolf by Night, Moon Knight on the same par as that of Batman or the X-Men or Wolverine or Spider-Man? I wouldn't even put, I'm going to be very honest, Blade and Moon Knight on par with Venom. I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. I just don't see those characters as having a lot of long-term validity. And I know a lot of comic collectors are going to disagree with me on that. It's just my opinion. They're very minute characters. It's just like Luke Cage, Hero for Hire. I love the character, love the concept, love how it came out of the 1970s. Is it really an investable first appearance over the long term? In my opinion, there's better opportunities out there. You know, that's just my assessment. I'm going to, should I go further? All right, I'll answer a couple more here, see if I can finish this, and then we'll be good to go. Let's see how far I can get. Sean, I would love more content investing in the sealed Pokemon video games. My portfolio of sealed Pokemon games is likely in high 5-figure range, low 6 figures. I am curious your thoughts on them as an investment, as they are down 50 to 80% from all-time highs and seem to be bottoming out. In all honesty, I answer this the same way for pretty much everyone. I think that there is some opportunity opening up in the vintage video game space, especially with graded games, but you have to use caution. You have to be careful because there's a lot of people that are still shying away from that market due to what happened, or allegedly, with market manipulation, a lot of games, a lot of these auction companies colluding. So I will tell you, I do think with prices being down, certain games for certain systems are trending at what I call healthy prices, to the point where if somebody wanted to take a risk on some of those games, there's very few in this paradigm that I'm stating right now, but if somebody wanted to take a risk on them, they could potentially turn a profit down the line. It is still very risky. It is still a very speculative market. Do with what we will with that advice. Next question. Sean, my wife owns a boutique and is thinking of speculating in Hermes Birkin bags. Where do you think the best info is to get started in that field? Okay, the problem you're going to have is inventory. In order to get Hermes Birkin bags stocked at a small boutique shop, or even if you're an individual, if you're somebody that doesn't have enough clout to try to get them directly from the manufacturer, you are most likely going to have to pay a significant premium to get them on the secondary market. So here's my question to you. Is your wife's boutique that high end where she can afford to pretty much tie up capital in these type of items over the long term, not knowing if she's going to be able to sell them right away? Because remember guys, Hermes Birkin bags are in demand, but they are still a higher end fashion item. There still has to be somebody that has the money and the means to be able to pay more than what you had to pay to acquire that particular item. And if you're going to be going after Hermes Birkin bags, unless if you have a contact or somebody close that works for Hermes or works for one of their retail stores, that they're willing to sell you a Birkin bag on the spot at retail, it's going to be very hard to play in this proverbial pond. So I would tell you, I would use caution in this market. Now, to be fair, if your wife's boutique is on like Martha's Vineyard or is in like Manhattan, New York City, and you know, she has one of the most top boutiques that maybe you didn't state the name here, but maybe she has a boutique that deals with solely wealthy clients that will pay those prices and pay a premium to get it, then it may be worth it to you. But overall, in all honesty, the answer would be no, because you're not going to be able to get them at wholesale or even at retail prices in today's day and age. They're too much of a hot commodity. It would be like coming to me asking, Sean, should I stock Rolex? You're going to have a problem stocking Rolex unless you're willing to pay a premium to get them on either the secondary market, or if you're going to stock vintage Rolex, you're going to have to pay a premium to get them. So you'd have to decide, and you'd have to weigh the cost basis and understand the opportunity cost and the expense of tying up capital in those particular types of items. I would recommend against this in very few circumstances, meaning overall, I would caution against this. There might be a situation, like I said, she has a high-end boutique. That may make it worth it, but overall, I would say no. Next question. Sean, I sell graded Star Wars figures on eBay and am a very large dealer. Most of the sales I make are by the full method. 6,300 in January today is my net. 6,300 in January today is my net. Okay, I don't know what that means because it's abbreviated. Do you think I should keep buying them or stop and put money into a mutual fund? I have around $120,000 worth of graded rare figures. In all honesty, I don't know your net worth. So I can't calculate how much you have in collectibles versus your overall net worth. I will state this. If your overall net worth is under $600,000, okay, I would honestly recommend that you don't put any more money into rare graded Star Wars figures. Remember, there are risks with investing in vintage toys. The bubbles can yellow, the bubbles can dry out, the items can come undone from their backing cards. There's a lot of risks in that market that the average person is not aware of. That's why I tend to go after the proof cards when I go after vintage Star Wars items, for that reason. I don't want to do anything with cracked bubbles, drying tape, any of that stuff. So that's where I caution people. So I will tell you, without knowing anything else about you, this would be impossible to answer because I simply don't know what you're comfortable with. If you're comfortable with taking this level of risk, you do you. It is a speculative market. Vintage toys are a little bit of a different beast, simply because it's not really on the antique side of the equation. And as far as collectibles go, with vintage toys, tastes change frequently. Where you're lucky at is you are investing in Star Wars. Star Wars is iconic. Star Wars is probably the blue chip collectible of the 70s and 80s, to be honest. So you're smart by focusing solely on Star Wars. It just depends on if you're comfortable assessing and maintaining this level of risk. I personally would not be comfortable with $120,000 worth of graded, carded, rare Star Wars figures, just to be honest. If you are, you do you. Next question, and this is actually the last question, guys. I got through it. Sean, would you mind sharing your thoughts on whether or not you view Confederate paper currency as a good long-term investment, and do the current market prices for this antique currency seem reasonable to you? Okay, here's the problem that you need to understand with Confederate paper money. In most cases, there was a boatload, not even a boatload, a shitload of this stuff produced. So if you're going after the common pieces, the stuff that just sells for a couple $100, even in high grade on the open market, in my opinion, I'm going to be 100% honest, it's a horrible investment. If you're going after, though, the truly rare pieces of Confederate paper money, that is history, my friend. That stuff does and always will have value on the overall market. So in that sense, if you are smart about this and you know what you're going after, you understand how this market works, this is a good market to be in, just to avoid the common dreck. There is too much out there. It was overprinted. When people ask me, Sean, I want to invest in currency like you, graded currency, graded U.S. currency, but, I want to go after obsoletes. If you don't know what an obsolete is, I'm not going to go through it in this video. I'll do a whole other video on it. Or I'm going to go after broken banknotes, which is really an obsolete. Or what do I want to say? Fractional currency. Or any of this other stuff. You got to understand that these are very niche markets under the currency umbrella. For the most part, people that collect currency like going after U.S. large size and in certain instances, U.S. small size notes that are pretty much legal tender even to this day. There are a few exceptions. With Confederate paper currency, again, you want to look at rarity. You want to go after the pieces that are more rare and scarce in scope and avoid the common dreck. That is my best advice to you. Thank you for watching. This actually concludes the 13,000 subscriber Q&A series. I don't know how many people are going to watch this video now that it's an hour long, but those of you that made it through, thank you. I really appreciate all of my viewers, subscribers, Patreons, whoever you are. If you took the time to watch this video, I thank you, because time is your most valuable asset. Never forget that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, and have a good night.